Hello there! It's Friday, which means it's time once again for the best movie podcast ever. The only movie podcast to offer objective and hyperbole-free discussion of every movie in the known universe. I am your host, the podcast with no name, Konrad, and with me as always, if he doesn't scare you, no evil thing will, it's Anthony James.
Konrad, darling!
Anthony James. It doesn't really work. There's not enough syllables in your name to really do the Cruella de Vil thing.
But I appreciate the rendition nonetheless. I should have actually said Konrad, darling, my darling, because that's apparently her last name now. So, yes. Konrad, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm all Disneyed up and ready to hit the town and talk about their latest offering. How are you?
Absolutely fine. You said all dizzied up. My head immediately went to the Simpsons gun. You know, had it set to whore, right? They had
that's very explicit, that line. I hadn't realised how explicit that was when I was like 15.
Yeah, the word whore. But in my mind, like, I was thinking about this film, Cruella. We'll get into it. But I'm thinking to myself, like, you know, just aim a gun at like a superhero film and have it set to Disney, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of... Yeah, we'll get there, folks. But so, for those of you who haven't figured out what we're talking about, this is a movie diary. It's where we talk about all the movies we have seen since the last time we did one of these. And this week, it should come as no surprise that we're going to be discussing the new hit sensation from Disney, just titled Cruella, because Disney's big on those one-word titles for movies about their bad guys where they #recontextualize their actions to maybe paint them in a slightly different light. So we're going to talk about that. I've also been watching, and I don't apologize for this, I'm going to say this word now, I've been watching porn, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Oh, no.
It's going to happen. Well, it'll become clear. You're going to have to trust. You're going to have to ride with me on this one, folks, and trust me when we get to it.
Poor choice of words. No, I'm just going to wait.
Yeah.
And I'll see. I'm much more respectable than that, Konrad, but I trust you.
That's not true. We were talking about it only 2 weeks ago. You were
mentioning... Hey. Oh yeah, I suppose unintentionally
whatever.
What's not disrespectful? Unintentionally non-respectful, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she did it.
No, I don't mean that's what I mean. I'm not being disrespectful towards anyone, but I'm saying, like, in general, my own tone was unrespectful, non-respectful.
Yeah, it was perhaps in poor taste, given you didn't realise that Chyna, the wrestler, had dabbled in hardcore pornography. I will say this now, just in case anyone's worried. It wasn't hardcore pornography we're talking about. It's another movie called Deep Murder, which is one of the best movies I have seen in years, and I'm looking forward to getting into that. But I think
okay.
That's enough faffing around, and it's time for us to talk about some gosh darn movies.
Let's do it.
Movies. We're here to talk about them. You know the deal, and I was going to say you know the game, and we came to play it, but I don't want to get sued by Triple H, so we're just going to abandon that. There's been, to be honest, I was struggling to find some decent news earlier in the week. I tried to do this early because I'm a fastidious sort. But then we actually got some cool stuff today. So I don't know if you've actually seen this yet, Anthony, but have you watched that there Eternals trailer yet?
I have not.
Okay.
But I have seen images of the costumes.
Yes. Yeah. So the costumes look awesome. The trailer came out, I think, middle of last week. I don't really know that much about the Eternals, to be honest. I'm a bit of a kind of fair weather comic book fan these days. I used to be much more into it than I am now. But I do know Chloe Zhao, who is fresh off a Best Picture win for Nomadland. She wrote and directed that, and she's writing and directing the Eternals. And I'm really interested to see how much freedom Marvel have given her in a kind of post-Avengers landscape to do her own thing. The trailer has like a kind of really interesting tone to it. It feels very sort of sweeping and melodramatic, and there's a sort of sense of gravitas to it that I didn't really expect. It looks very pretty as well. So I'm really looking forward to this movie now, a lot more than Black Widow or the other one, Shang-Chi. Are you like kind of planning on seeing either of those two?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to see them all. You know me, guys. I haven't done my Marvel cinema watch-along in a few weeks here, but still on the back burner.
Yeah.
Yeah. It will be done. But yeah, I'm definitely going to see every Marvel film I'll see. Like, to be honest, yeah.
I'm not sure about Black Widow or Shang-Chi. Those might be like my kind of Thor 2s, where I'm just like, I'll leave it.
Yeah, well, I'm a bigger fan than you, Conrad.
Yeah.
No, I like the idea of like getting it all. Like, so whenever we get like another really, really good one, like the Avengers Endgame or something, I get all the things, you know.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of going to see a big one and then like Shang-Chi shows up and I'm like, who the hell's this? You know?
Yeah, I did get a bit of that with Infinity War. Was that the first one? Or
Captain
Endgame?
Marvel?
No, well, so the first of the part 3
Infinity
of the Avengers
War,
movies,
Infinity War. Yeah.
where Captain Marvel showed up. And like, I know who Captain Marvel is because that was the character when I read the comics. But it was also like, I don't know what's going on here. Like, why is Captain Marvel friends with all the Avengers? Like, when did this happen? The answer obviously being in Captain Marvel, the one I didn't see.
Well, you didn't actually see her beat the shit out of Jude Law either, so...
Oh, was Jude Law in that movie?
Yeah.
No, I didn't see that movie. I that's one of the ones I didn't watch because it just seemed, as a child of the 90s, like the idea of 90s nostalgia kind of triggered my spidey sense for hating things that are popular, and I was like, no way, you're not going to get me. You're not going to play some Nirvana and get this guy on your side, all right?
No, I thought it was really good, and the Captain Marvel stuff is where they're bringing the Skrull into it as well, so they're having like all the undercover Skrull stuff going on.
So is that where... So okay, I'll spoiler warning this. Spoiler warning for WandaVision. So at the end of WandaVision, the aliens turn up. Those are Skrull, right?
They are Skrull. They can change into if they see someone, they can change to look exactly like them. So basically, they brought the Skrull into. There's in the comics. I haven't read the comics, but there's like Skrull invasions and stuff, and they go in and like all of a sudden they're undercover everywhere, and that's sort of what it's implying at the end of WandaVision. Yeah. But yeah, so the Skrull are a really cool aspect to the cinematic universe, and I assume there's going to be a huge deal with the Skrull eventually, and they've been brought in through Captain Marvel, because Captain Marvel was really interesting. Like they had like this strange war going on between can't even remember the name of the people, but Captain Marvel's people who she was raised by, and then also not raised by
the Kree, was it?
The Kree, yeah, the Kree and the Skrull.
I always get the Skrull and the Kree mixed up. I can never remember which one's which. One of them looks like goblins. That's all I remember.
To be honest with you, it was the Skrull looked like goblins kind of, but it was one of those aspects in the film where the Kree like had a war against the Skrull, and the Skrull were vermin, you know, and they were like terrorists and stuff. But as you dig into it, and as Captain Marvel found out about it, it actually turned out that the Kree were just like authoritarian, like overlords to the Skrull.
Oh, okay.
The Kree were.
They both sides to the Skrull Kree conflict.
Yeah, well, the Kree it was like all the propaganda was around the Kree and everything like this, and it's one of those instances where the Marvel Cinematic Universe is very clearly making a comment on real world things.
Yeah.
But if you were to start to say, like, I'm not even going to do it because I know that I'll get yelled at in the comments, possibly not by our listeners, but some random person who's listening. I could be yelled at in the comments. So, like, if I was to say two countries or two sets of people in the world who there are propaganda around which ones are the nice guys. If I say that they're showing that in Captain Marvel, then people will say, "Keep your politics out of my cinematic universe." Yeah. It's like, but that's what they're literally doing. You can see it. Like, you can see it. If you think that the Skrull aren't too bad and you watch that film, then apply that empathy to the real world. Like,
no politics in films. There've never been politics in films, and God willing, we'll keep it out forever. Citizen Kane had nothing to say about politics or any kind of social commentary. It's just about a man who ran a newspaper badly, and that's
the only place you can learn history or have a comment on history is through statues. That's as we know. That's the only way. The only way to have any comment on history is through a statue. Okay, yeah. So the Eternals looks pretty cool. Angelina Jolie's. I don't know about. I haven't seen a film with her in it for a long time.
Oh, you haven't seen the. Oh, what is that? There's literally a movie out this week starring Angelina Jolie that no one has seen. It's called like They Were Your Friends or something. I can't remember the name of it. I'm gonna Google Angelina Jolie to remind myself what the name of that movie is.
Those Who Wish Me Dead.
Those Who Wish Me Dead. That's the one. I was close.
No, I've never seen it.
No one's seen it. That's the problem. Like it's an Angelina Jolie movie in 2021. She's not that much of a headline name. With that said, though, I am quite excited about this cast. Like I think she'll be good in it. Like I'm trying to remember the last thing I saw her in, but she was in like Girl Interrupted earlier in her career, where she was actually really good. So she can act. I blame Billy Bob Thornton for for derailing her career by making her weird.
Well, the last thing I saw her in, to be honest with you, and the only thing I've seen her in the last 10 years, quite on topic for today, is Maleficent, Mistress of Evil.
Oh yeah, so we'll get to that when we get to it, but I've not actually seen that. But I'm sure there are comparisons between Cruella and Maleficent. I mean, Disney definitely thinks there are, otherwise it probably wouldn't have made this movie. But yeah, Richard Madden, always a fan of Richard Madden. He's great in anything that I've really seen him in. So yeah, Eternals looks rad. Chloe Zhao, I am convinced, is going to do a great job with this because she's hot off of one of the most popular movies of the last few years. So we shall see. Moving on from that, Anthony, how do you feel about Indiana Jones?
I mean, he's all right. He's a bit of all right according to me. Shia LaBeouf, yeah, Shia LaBeouf. You too.
Oh yeah. What's his name in that? Mutt something is his name in that.
I don't know what it is. Something like that.
Yeah. I like that diner scene in that movie. I really dislike Indiana Jones 4, but there are some good things involving Shia LaBeouf in that movie.
Well, I like Shia LaBeouf. I like him. I don't know if it's within me to forgive him for what he actually did a few years ago in terms of his rants and stuff. But I think that he's out of any celebrity I've ever seen, he's trying to come to terms with what he was like, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I like the stuff he's put out anyway. Him as a person, he's a bit of a weirdo.
Yeah, I think he can be relied upon to deliver at least a committed performance in most things that he makes. Unfortunately, I mean, he's not confirmed for this yet, but the kind of relatively exciting news is that Indiana Jones 5 is one of those projects that has been bandied around, kind of like a Back to the Future 4 almost at this point. Been bandied around. People are they going to start it? They're not going to start it. Since 2008, since Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out, and everyone was like, hey, this movie's bad, don't make another one. But as it turns out, there have been released, or leaked I should say, set photographs for this, which implies very heavily that they are actually starting shooting Indiana Jones 5 now. It's of a ruined castle, or a half-built castle, so it doesn't tell us that much about what's going on, but we do know that James Mangold of Ford versus Ferrari fame most recently, and also Logan he directed, so he's a very good director. I like him.
Le Mans 66 was the
Le Mans
UK
66,
Yeah, well, I actually quite liked for Ford vs Ferrari.
I did too. I love that movie. It was good fun.
Yeah.
But so the only thing we know about it is he's directing it, and Harrison Ford is definitely in it. So it's not a full reboot.
That's good.
Harrison Ford's pretty old, so
he's not going to be doing much. Let's be honest. Apparently, Mads Mikkelsen's in it too.
Yeah, that's rumors. I think at this stage, but I mean, Mads Mikkelsen, I'll watch him in anything. He's great in everything.
What I hope is that, I don't know about you, what I would prefer is to sort of have this fifth one as sort of a send-off to this. And what do you prefer? Do you prefer them to pass the mantle to someone who isn't actually Indiana Jones but continue the storyline? Or would you rather them just do a fifth one, give Harrison Ford another payday, give him another bit of limelight, and then reboot?
I think I'd just
never see it again.
I think I really like the Indiana Jones movies. I think there's more fun that you could have with them. But I think you just need to reboot the whole thing at this point.
Yeah.
I just don't think Harrison Ford has... Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe I'll watch it, because I think this one's supposed to be set in the 60s. So maybe I'll watch it and he'll be punching the shit out of commies or whatever. And,
why, is he going to have the Disney face on to make him look young?
That's the worry.
60s?
Yeah. That's the worry. Because, I mean, the last one was set in the late 50s, I think, and that was 13 years ago.
Yeah. He looks a lot older now, though.
Yeah, he does. So I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, it's hard to see what they're actually doing with this. Obviously, they haven't actually started shooting yet, or if they have, they're keeping it very quiet. So I don't know what his involvement is going to be, but I think personally, I would prefer them. I love the theme. I love the character. I think Harrison Ford brings a lot to that character, so I'm skeptical that anyone else could do it justice. I remember a few years ago being really on board. They're like, Chris Pratt could play Indiana Jones bandwagon. And then I realised that Chris Pratt is a weird fundamentalist Christian. I was like, maybe we should not give him as much exposure as all that. But so now I don't know if there's anyone who could do it.
So actually, 60s. So who's the bad guys going to be? Is it going to be the Russians?
It'll definitely be the Russians. It has
or the
to be
hippies. Or the hippies.
It could be that would be a turn. If Indiana Jones, in his old age, becomes really, really like anti-free speech.
Or maybe it'll be all embroiled in the space race.
Oh, send Indiana Jones to the moon.
Yeah, he takes the place of Buzz Aldrin. Like,
there we go. Or the third one that no one can ever remember the name of.
Michael Collins.
So there you go. I knew you'd know that.
Well, I think people who are au fait with Irish history know why I remember his name's Michael Collins.
I'm not going to touch that. We're moving on.
Yeah.
moving on from that to an exciting new feature that has nothing to do with Ireland's troubled past. And
actually, before we do that, let me just have a little. I can tell you a little story about the Michael Collins film. So what do you call him? De Valera, who's an Irish historical figure as well, was played by Alan Rickman in the film Michael Collins. Liam Neeson was played Michael Collins. And one night, I may have mentioned this on a podcast before, that I met Alan Rickman. I definitely I tweeted about it one time. But I met Alan Rickman, and me and my wife were there, and my wife's friend was there too. And we went up to talk to him because he was at a play that one of my wife's friends was in. And so we went up to talk to him, but unfortunately they were serving free wine at this play. So we were, well liquored up. The funny thing was, like 2 months before, my wife had actually seen him and met him in like a foyer of a different play. Yeah. So my wife was like playing it cool, like sitting back, like, no, you just go talk to him. I've met him before. You just go talk to him. So we went and talked to Alan Rickman, and we were like, all right, Alan, how are you? How are you? And then my wife's friend says, I just want to say, Mr. Rickman, your face is synonymous with GCSE history for me, right? Because they watched they watched the Michael Collins film in history class, and then he's like, "You're not Irish, are you?" And we were like, "Oh, yes, we are." He's like, "I thought so." And then the funniest thing was, as we were walking away after saying like drunkenly annoying him, walking away, my wife's friend turns to me and goes, "I didn't even do GCSE history."
I can imagine like Alan Rickman being quite caught off guard by that compliment. Not like I really liked you in Die Hard, but GCSE history. That's it. That's the extent to which you have impacted this young man's life. I've not seen him in that role. Maybe I should. Maybe it'd be a transformative experience.
I haven't seen it since GCSE history, so I can't tell you what it's like.
Well, I'll tell you what. In fact, no, I'm not going to say that because it was going to give too much away. There, in talking about history, that's a segue. Here we go. I found it eventually. Talking about history, it leads us quite naturally into, of course, the exciting new game show that all the kids are talking about, where I select a movie from 25 years ago today, and Anthony tries to guess what that movie is. We are, of course, talking about Back to the Future!
Yes! I'm going for 3 points today. Going for 3.
Last week, Anthony did a great job in guessing Dragonheart and got 2 points to that. The week before, he got 1 point for guessing... what was it the week before? Mission Impossible. So he's looking for 3. He's looking to build on that good form and get himself 3. For those of you who have never played the game before, here's how it works. I will read out 5 clues, which Anthony will have a chance to guess after each one. Each clue he hears will lower the score that he gets. And by all means, please play along at home. Anthony, are you ready for Back to the Future?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Clue number 1. This is the only Michael Bay movie thus far to enjoy a release in the Criterion Collection.
Oh. Interesting. Armageddon.
It's not Armageddon. Is that Michael Bay? Armageddon.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
It's a good shout. I would like to own this movie, the Criterion version of this movie, I will say.
I think I know it.
Okay, well, hear the 4th clue, and then you can have your guess.
Although what I bet you I'll say something that isn't even a Michael Bay film, and everyone will laugh at me. But
I mean, it's a bit of a crapshoot in the 90s, to be honest, because everything felt like a Michael Bay film for a little while there. Clue number 2. Quentin Tarantino and Aaron Sorkin are both uncredited writers who helped punch up the screenplay.
Okay, that doesn't help me at all. I do know Aaron Sorkin and his work. He's good. I believe what did he write that I really liked? Oh, he wrote Social Network, I think.
He did.
And
directed it, I think.
Possibly, yeah. Okay, so my guess, and this is just based on the Michael Bay still, it's probably wrong. The Rock.
Are you locking in The Rock?
I'm locking it in.
Okay, let's just refer to the computer. Ladies and gentlemen, Anthony has done it on the second clue. It is, of course, The Rock.
Yes!
What a step up. Yeah, they talk about the big players appearing in the big games, and Anthony has roared into life early in this this rendition of Back to the Future. A phenomenal. That's 4 points you've got there.
I've never seen it.
Have you never seen The Rock? It's a very good movie.
My dad used to love it. Like,
it is a legitimately very good movie. So I'll go through the final 3 clues that you would have heard had you needed them, and we'll see if these would have made it any clearer. But I mean, you're already there.
I'm delighted.
It absolutely just pick that one right out of the top drawer. So the third clue would have been this would be the third movie Hans Zimmer scored in 1996 to gross over $100 million after Broken Arrow, which made 148, and Twister, which made 495.
I wouldn't have got a lot of Hans Zimmer score on it, but Jesus Christ,
it's a great score. It is a great score.
That man never stops.
No, I mean, I know that obviously there's more to a movie making a lot of money than the score, but bloody hell, like, you look at his resume for the 90s, like, yeah, you know, just a cheeky, like, $1 billion that his movies made in 1996.
Lion King, he actually did Lion King, you know.
Did he do Lion King? I didn't know that. Oh, so I guess, they just had, like, Elton John do the title track.
The songs, yeah. He did the songs.
Yeah.
Hans Zimmer did the actual score.
Now that's that's really cool. I don't think I knew that, but I can kind of see it, like, with the ambient music, I guess. Also, I've just checked, and it was David Fincher who directed The Social Network. Please don't at me. I thought I checked that.
That's right. I thought I didn't think Aaron Sorkin was the director. To be
as soon as
honest
I said that,
I wasn't gonna call you out.
Yeah, as soon as I said it, I was like, because I get confused because he was like a showrunner on. I think he was like a showrunner for The West Wing and that Newsroom show with Jeff Daniels.
And a showrunner's kind of like, he's above the directors, you know what I mean? So he sort of give you the air of him being in charge.
Yeah. So the final 2 clues, before we move too far off topic, the second to last clue would have been the premiere of this movie was held at Alcatraz in San Francisco, where it is predominantly set. And the final clue would have been Sean Connery reportedly accepted his co-starring position in this movie when he learned that Nicolas Cage had been cast to play the other lead. Which I like the idea that Sean Connery in 1996 was like, who's playing the other role? And then they're like, oh, it's Nicolas Cage, Mr. Connery. It's like, shine me up.
Shine me up.
Shine me up. Yeah.
This is like the two classic films, 2 weeks in a row. Big old Sean Connery did well in 96.
Yeah, summer 96 was the summer of Sean.
Speaking of Indiana Jones as well, jeez.
Like he was absolute. I want to know when Entrapment is coming out. That's surely around this time.
Oh, you know, that was a fantastic film. I tell you what, that laser beam scene. That's all I'll say.
I have heard. This is probably apocryphal, so maybe I'll get done for slander. But I have heard that Sean Connery insisted upon there being a love scene between him and Catherine Zeta-Jones in that movie, which I can 100% believe.
That's really like grey territory, isn't it? That's really like
it's very much like. I'm not sure if this technically counts as abusive, but it's definitely not good. Whatever it is.
Because if Catherine Zeta-Jones had said no to that, he would have been like, "Get me Nicolas Cage."
Put Nicolas in a wig. But there we go. That was Back to the Feature. An absolute romping display from Anthony there. I will say now, I've looked forward in time to where we're going in the next few weeks, and there is a tail off. Like we're kind of riding high in summer blockbuster territory right now, but there's going to be some rough ones in the next few weeks.
All right.
But I'll tell you what's not a rough one, and that is 2021's. Oh, well, I'll tell you what's not that rough. Let me rephrase that. And that's 2021's Cruella, the movie we're all here to talk about, or predominantly here to talk about. Anthony and I both watched it. Anthony, let's just get this out of the way early. give me a kind of broad thought of what you felt about this movie.
Broad thought is that it grew on me.
Yep.
It definitely, the second 2/3 were far better than the first third. That's my sort of overall.
Yes, agree. I will say right now that we're going to start off kind of avoiding spoilers as much as possible, but there will come a point in the discussion of this movie where we are going to start talking spoilers. So we will announce it, but if you care about not being spoiled, there'll be a we'll point out when we're going to start talking spoilers. But yeah, absolutely agree. I think that first third where they're setting up how she gets to London is just and then setting up how she and like how Cruella meets the story is just clumsy and very, very like I mean, I don't expect that much of a sort of typical Disney fare, but it's just there's so much in there that doesn't need to be in there with her meeting this character who will go on to be the antagonist of the movie through pure chance, and then it turns out that she's responsible for some family drama in her past. It just all feels very, very heavy-handed and clumsy to me.
It felt to me like Tim Burton now, as opposed to 30 years ago, and maybe that's just because like it was black and white going on that made me think of Tim Burton. But it had that definite Tim Burton-y type sort of production design to it at the very beginning, and I thought that so much when you put so much into the advertising of a film that Emma Stone is going to play Cruella de Vil, and to be honest with you, I was quite excited to see her play Cruella de Vil, and even in the trailer, it got me psyched to watch it. And then the first 20 minutes, she's not in it. And
there's no one really to carry those first 20 minutes. It's terrible setup. Like, we don't need to see Cruella de Vil as a child. And like the thing is as well, like this might be minor spoilers, but it literally is the first like 2 minutes of the film. I don't know about you, Konrad, but I despise the choice to have Cruella de Vil be born with black and white hair. Yeah, it's just so okay. This is the weird thing about this movie that I find really odd. I think if you took this movie and made it not a Cruella de Vil movie, it would be fine. I think it tells an interesting story, and we'll get to the performances of the Emmas Stone and Thompson in a minute, who I think are by far the saving grace of this movie. I think those two turn in great performances, and we'll discuss that in a second. But I think if you take the sort of bones of this and the performances that they get and the kind of presentational elements from director Craig Gillespie, who did the Fright Night remake and I, Tonya, both two movies that I both quite enjoyed.
I do love I, Tonya.
And you take it and you remove the constraints of this kind of Cruella de Vil marketing, it would be a good movie. The problems with it being kind of clumsy in its setup would still be there. But I struggle to imagine anyone who's like seeing this child with black and white hair and is like, "Fuck yeah, that's Cruella de Vil," or like, the bit that I guess we're going to start getting into spoilers now pretty early here, guys. But she gets a car at some point, which is a de Vil, and she says, "Oh, I like that. That's my name." And are there people out there who are like, "Woo, yeah!" It's just like I think they're selling this to an audience that doesn't exist, and it just feels like like that slavish devotion to these kind of stylistic elements of the character really detract from what's otherwise quite a fun movie, I thought.
Yeah, like, to be honest with you, like, I completely like feel the same way as you in terms of who they sell in this movie too. There's moments like there's a particular moment where they mentioned, I can't remember exactly what it was, but they mentioned something that happened in the original film, okay?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, the moment where okay, so this is not plot spoiler, but there's a dog walking by with an owner, and it's a very clear copy of the dog at the start, walking by as Pongo is looking out at the park, and the dog looks like the owner. And then Horace, the character of Horace, says, do you ever notice that dogs look like their owners? And I'm just sitting here thinking, what's going on? Maybe I'm too familiar with the original. Maybe other people who haven't seen the original as much as me, like, is that for people who've seen the original a lot? Because me, as someone who gets the reference, I'm like, what? Why the fuck do we need that?
Yeah,
I've seen the other film. Like, I don't need a callback to it.
Yeah,
and then,
absolutely.
But then people who haven't seen the other film, they're sitting here not even realizing that it's a Like, are they meant to be like? I don't get who this is for.
That's exactly. I think that's exactly the problem. And like, okay, so I'll say this now, full on spoilers. We're gonna go into it. So like, generally speaking, it was fine. But like, if you want to avoid the spoilers, it was fine. Very stylish. I wouldn't expect it to be anything too impressive. But getting into spoiler territory, I haven't seen this movie. I haven't seen 101 Dalmatians since I was a kid, so probably in the 90s. The only things that I was looking through my phone being like, okay, Anita, I vaguely remember there being a character called Anita in the first one. Horace and Jasper, I vaguely remember those being in the original. But it's not like there's no value in that recognition. There's no like nothing inherently cool about it. It's not. I feel like they're trying to get the same thing out of a Cruella de Vil movie as they get out of like a stinger in a Marvel movie, where everyone's like, "Oh shit, it's Thanos." It's like no one's having that reaction. Like no one cares that Anita shows up or Roger shows up in this movie.
Like oh my god,
Roger played by Phone Jacker.
Yeah. The fact that Roger used to be an employee of Emma Thompson's character.
Yeah, the Baroness.
He's a lawyer. Like, I know maybe in the original film there was some sort of allusion to the fact that Roger gave up his career to do music, but at the same time I'm like, what? I preferred whenever it was Jeff Daniels and he was a computer games designer. Like.
And he was just shouting at Whizzer from his desk. The only thing I remember about that movie.
Like, Roger and Anita didn't need to be in the film. The fact that Anita... Like, I understand Anita more, because obviously Cruella has the relationship with Anita. But at the same time, well done. Who wrote this film?
Yeah.
Tony McNamara, Dana Fox.
Yeah, Dana Fox and Tony McNamara did.
Yeah, give him a wee pat on the back there, Konrad, because you know what? They've taken Cruella de Vil saying, Anita, darling, and you know what they've done? They've made the character's last name Darling. Oh my god, they are geniuses.
Yeah, and so, okay, I guess what I'll say right now is... So this, very briefly, the plot of this movie is that Cruella de Vil is a child with I guess like it's never like kind of expressed in medical terms, but she has, a darker side to her. She fights back when the boys bully her at school or whatever, and she doesn't like boys telling her what to do, basically. And there is this kind of like undertone of like girl power kind of going on in this movie, which I don't dislike as a sort of concept. I think it's a good thing to have, but it's very it's very performative in this movie.
I'm I'm critical of that, Konrad, to be honest with you, because for me, the undertone of girl power there, right? Okay. I think it's actually... Now, come on, guys. I want to be the first to say this, and I'm sure you understand. These corporations don't actually have the rights of women at the heart
exactly.
of their business.
That is the problem. Like, it's kind of like Disney doesn't give a shit. They just want to make money.
Yeah, and the thing about that is, why I don't like this sort of girl power thing, I am woman, hear me roar. Why I don't really like that is because she's a bad guy, right? And Cruella de Vil is a bad guy.
Yeah.
By actually taking her and making us have empathy for her and making her have a mother who died who wasn't really her mother, and by doing all that, it's like saying that women have to be you have to have empathy for women, you have to feel sorry for women. It's like no. She was a badass bad guy that should have stayed that way.
Yeah, and I think
that's the more empowering thing to female actors and female characters.
Well, yeah, it's just this very unnecessary idea that you need to expand upon any positive kind of female character that you find, rather than writing new ones. You have to go back and recontextualize the old ones. And I think so. Just to briefly finish the setup, there's some problems at school. They move to London. Cruella's mother is knocked off of a cliff by some Dalmatians at a fashion ball. Cruella flees to London, falls in with two thieves called Horace and Jasper. There are romantic undertones in her relationship with one of them. She gets a job working cleaning at a big department store in London, where she meets a woman played by Emma Thompson called the Baroness, purely by chance, who it turns out steals ideas from a bunch of talented fashion designers, one of which Cruella becomes, and also murdered her mother. Murdered her. The person she thought was her mother, turns out Emma Thompson is actually her mother. It's a whole thing. If that sounds like a complicated setup for the movie, you're absolutely right. As Anthony said, the first 20 minutes of this movie are cumbersome and probably shouldn't be there. I think I don't want to rag on. I don't want to just incessantly rag on it. So the one thing I will say, and I want to get your opinion on this, Anthony, is that I've hinted at it briefly before, but I think Emma Thompson and Emma Stone are really good in this movie. I think they ham it up in a really fun way, and they seem like they're having fun on set, which definitely translates into their performances.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you know. They're almost both playing the same character in a way.
Yeah,
like,
they very much are. Yeah,
like they're both like this really over the top, posh sort of bad bitch kind of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I did enjoy them both, and like I thought Emma Thompson did well to sort of disguise herself within the role. Like, she's one of these actresses who is very, you know. I know it's Emma Thompson when I'm watching it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But she did well to disguise herself in the role. I could also see that there was something within Emma Stone's performance where, although Emma Thompson was the antagonist, you could always see Cruella sort of aspiring to be her, even though it was her like worst enemy, you know?
Yeah, and I think the movie is at its best when basically after Emma Stone finds out that Emma Thompson, once Cruella, or Estella, as she's actually called at that point in the movie, finds out that the Baroness is responsible for her mother's death, it essentially turns into like a revenge movie where she's turning up in these like kind of bizarre situations to upstage the Baroness's shows. And that, I think, to me, that's the best part of the movie, is when they're really leaning into the style, really leaning into the aesthetic. And it's funny, I watched the Tim Burton Batman very recently, and I joked with you about this before we started recording, but it very much put me in mind of like the Joker in terms of the Joaquin Phoenix movie, but also in terms of like Jack Nicholson's Joker, with like she turns up in like a garbage truck that like dumps out a bunch of rubbish onto the floor, and then she just rises out of it like the fucking Penguin in Batman Returns, and then drives off, and the garbage turns into a train of her dress, and it very much has that kind of feel of like Gotham is mine, like you know, kind of rolls out like a really, really cheesy villain. And I really enjoyed that stuff, even if it's kind of very fleeting in its style.
Yeah, and like the original reveal of her red dress at the party, the first time she appears as well, was ruined in the trailer, but at the same time, I really liked that, and that was another allusion to sort of a Batman-esque thing. They were really doing like a Batman villain thing with it.
Yeah, 100%.
And like in The Dark Knight, whenever Heath Ledger's Joker shows up at the dinner party on the top of the like Harvey Dent's fundraiser, and he's going around. You see Bruce Wayne? You seen him? You know, and he's going around like slapping people's glasses out of their hands. That kind of reminded me of this as well. You know?
Yeah, I think my problem with it is that in Batman, the Joker done fall into a pit of acid to turn into that, whereas like Estella just decides she's going to be Cruella de Vil, and suddenly she's like, it's like a villain origin story without any kind of inciting incident. It's just like one day she's like, I'm going to be Cruella now, and then she starts waltzing around like she's goddamn Tommy Lee Jones playing Two-Face. And it's like...
I do agree with you there. I feel to me that I did like if you're going to not call her Cruella from the start, I liked where the origin of the name came from.
Yeah,
I did like it being like a way of her mother saying "Don't let Cruella out," you know, because she's like Estella Cruella. It sort of made sense. That one wasn't too cheesy to me. But I do agree with you. Like it was night and day. No pun intended, because of the old colors. It was night and day between her Estella turning into Cruella, and it was like a light switch. But at the same time, if you are to believe that this is the type of person she is, where she is playing the role of Cruella, and she's deciding that from now on I am going to be this role of Cruella, then I understand that she turns it on. But at the same time, it's making us think that there must be that sort of empathy-demanding character of Estella within the crust of Cruella all the time.
And I don't know how you feel about it, but I do actually feel, maybe it's in Emma Stone's performance, but I did actually feel like she managed to convey that. I think my big problem, and it's kind of what we spoke about when we first started talking about this, is that when you look at where Cruella ends up at the end of this movie, you know, so the Baroness gets rumbled, Cruella is kind of happy, she's avenged her mother's death, she's found out like the truth of her own parentage, she seems to have a kind of budding romantic relationship with one of these people who she's grown up with, and she seems to be in quite a happy place and is like kind of has found equilibrium, I guess. And then trying to sort of navigate from where she is at the end of this movie to, which I think is, well, we'll get into like setting and like kind of period trappings in a minute, I think, 'cause it's something I wanted to mention. But where she is at the end of this movie to where she is in 101 Dalmatians, which I think is supposed to be like set a couple of years after this movie takes place. It just doesn't feel like this should be. This almost feels like a soft reboot of 101 Dalmatians, because they mention the Dalmatian coat. But she just doesn't seem like the kind of person who's going to go kill like hundreds of dogs to make a coat, fundamentally, in this movie.
Maybe they're leaving room for the next one. You know, maybe there'll be a Cruella 2.
Yeah, maybe they'll do it. Maybe they'll do a sequel.
Don't get cruel again. But yeah, I'm looking forward to
That'd be
it.
A great subtitle for that movie.
Yeah. I would like to see a sequel to this, to be honest with you. Like, if they were, I don't think it's a soft reboot, but I think you could definitely do more to get her there. I think like the stage is set, like, but not the actual character stage. Like, she's got her mansion, she's got her riches,
she's got a car, she's got the car, she's got the car, she's got the clout within the industry. Roger doesn't have a job anymore. Yep, and he's writing music by the end of this movie.
He's writing music, so they did do a good job of putting the pieces into place, but I don't believe, by a character standpoint, like, if they didn't include the stuff about the Dalmatian coat already, and if they didn't have, like, just make, like, I understand having to have Dalmatians in the film in some way.
It's so dumb. It is so dumb.
Like, I understand it, like, having them in there in some way. Having said that, there should, if you want to do one of those stupid references where you, like, drive by a garden and there's a Dalmatian barking at her one time, maybe do that. Yeah. Don't have them be like one of the main antagonists.
Yeah, the vicious Dalmatians that tackle her mother off a cliff. It's just oh, it turns out it was the Dalmatians that were the villains all along, and we should hate Pongo and Perdita.
What I don't like about that, Konrad, it feels like that's been left in from a previous draft, because they didn't actually really play on the idea of her hating Dalmatians.
No, not at all.
So it's like they came up with an idea. What if Dalmatians knocked her mum and killed her mum off the cliff, and then she develops this hatred of Dalmatians, and that's why she wants to kill them in the actual film. But then they're like, that's a cool idea, I suppose. Let's write a draft of that. And then like 50 drafts later, they still got the Dalmatians in there.
We left the pages in, guys.
But there's none of the animosity towards the dog.
No, she literally says, "I don't want to hurt these dogs" when they're trying to get the keys out of the Dalmatian who's eaten him. And it's like, well, why is this a plot point then?
Well, what's going on? And like, also, her best mate is a dog. Like, she's got a dog.
She's a dog person. She likes dogs. She has 2 dogs, in fact.
Like, in the 101 Dalmatians film, I think is she carrying at one point like a little tiny dog? I don't think she is, actually.
I don't know. I can't remember.
She might be, but anyway, it was weird. Like, and I will say another thing, right? Like, they are getting good at it, but it still is in the phase where I'm thinking, like, why am I watching like a film about Cruella and there's little CG dogs standing next to her?
Oh, yeah, they're so bad.
The CG dogs, like, what's going on here? Why?
Yeah, they never look good, and this they look particularly bad. It's I find pretty much all the CG in this movie to be awful, to be honest. One thing I wanted to very briefly stop on before we kind of wrap up Cruella talk. So this is kind of a period movie. In that, it's very much like 60s, late 70s London. But it feels to me like they don't... the people who made this either don't know what period they're trying to set it in, or they don't care. Because in the score, we get Feeling Good, which is Nina Simone from the early 60s. Then we get a cover of a Led Zeppelin song, which is from the early 70s. Then you get Stone Cold Crazy, which is Queen. That's from the late 70s. And then you get fucking disco. And it's just like, what... Who is and you get stuff like Cruella turning up on Portobello Road wearing like a punk get-up, and and Jasper like dyes his hair red and wears like a denim vest at some point, and it's just, it all feels very hollow. It's just like they're kind of, they want the trappings of punk or whatever, but they don't actually want to do they don't really want to do anything with it. They just want to have a bit where Cruella turns up at a clothes shop on Portobello Road.
Yeah, I think there was a direct reference to some punk band with The Future on her face, but I can't remember.
Oh, maybe. I'm not punk enough to know what that's a reference to.
Yeah, so I think they were trying to do like the rising of the underclass to become like, I think they were definitely doing a punk thing.
Yeah.
You're right. It was a bit heavy-handed and a bit sort of out of place in some places, but I like the aesthetic of it.
Yeah, and I like the songs. It's just odd for the score to be like, right, now we're doing Nina Simone, now we're doing Led Zeppelin, now we're doing Queen, now we're doing Iggy and the Stooges. Like, what genre are you going for here, guys? It's just like just play a bunch of music from from between 1962 and 1978.
Yeah, and like, to be honest with you, I'm a bit surprised. Like, hearing that the director of I, Tonya made this, Gillespie, I really love that film, and this has a lot of lazy aspects to it. This film, I'm going to be honest with you, they lean far too heavily on montage in this film.
Yes,
there's
a lot
like
of montage.
There's like eight montages in the first 45 minutes.
Yeah,
it
just substitute for any good dialogue because they don't have any that doesn't directly involve either Emma Stone or Emma Thompson. It's like, just montage the rest of these characters out. Final thoughts: Mark Strong with hair. How do you feel?
I actually thought, stick him next to a CG dog and he doesn't look too bad.
Seeing Mark Strong's character in a flashback with hair shook me to my very core. I've never seen. He's one of those people. He's like Patrick Stewart. He's just been bald since birth, essentially, and I don't care to see him with hair, frankly.
Yeah, I'm also going to say something else pretty controversial.
Go on.
And I'm sorry to Mark Strong for this, but Mark Strong takes me out of a film. I don't know why. Because he's just like so recognizable to me. Like, he's just I can't not view him as like Mark Strong.
I don't know if he's a good actor anymore. Like, I saw him in. I remember the movie that made me like fall in love with Mark Strong as an actor was a Ridley Scott movie called Body of Lies, where he plays like a basically a Jordanian head of security who's kind of like a sort of good guy who's helping Leonardo DiCaprio find some terrorists or something, and he was amazing in that. But every other movie I've seen him in since then, and I include the Kingsman movies in this because those movies are awful. I hate them. Every time I see him, I'm like, oh, that's Mark Strong. Like, not. He's never convinced me that he's anything other than Mark Strong. Even in critically acclaimed movies like, I guess, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy or something.
I do love that film.
I do as well, but Mark Strong in it is just like, that's just. He never convinces me that.
I forgot Mark Strong was in it, if I'm going to be honest with you.
I mean, he's not
Gary Oldman. Yeah. To be honest with you, Mark Strong, probably the defining feature of his career is going to be that he sort of looks like a poor man's Jason Statham.
Oh, there you go. Put that on his IMDb page. But that's Cruella, folks. Final thoughts, Anthony? Like a general kind of gist of whether you'd advise people to go and see it?
Well, this has been very negative. Let's be honest with you. But I am gonna say I genuinely like the first third did drag, and I felt like I was watching something for an audience lower than the target market. The 12A, like sort of 12 plus rating it's got doesn't really jive with the first third of the film. Yeah. Having said that, it does grow into itself. I like the aesthetic of it. I do like, even though the music is all over the place, I do like some of the moments with music. Yeah. I like Emma Stone and Emma Thompson's performances. I would like to see Emma Stone as Cruella again, I think. Yeah,
I think I agree with that. I think, I don't want to give the impression that I dislike this movie. I enjoyed it. I think it has some flaws, and I think it's probably a little bit. I think it overstays its welcome a little bit as well, a little bit too long for what it's actually trying to do. But yeah, so that's Cruella. That's go check that out if you're in the mood for Disney's version of the Joker. Now, I promised at the beginning of this show that we were going to talk about porn, and gosh darn it, it's my show, so I'm going to do it. There is a movie that I watched this week, and I'm only going to talk about it briefly because because you haven't seen it, and I don't want to drag on too much. But there's a movie that came out in 2019, I believe, called Deep Murder, which is basically, if you take one of those, I think it's called like Skinamax in the US, it's like Channel 5 in the UK, and I'm sure most countries in Europe have their own version of it, like kind of softcore pornography, and you take a set of one of those movies, you take all the kind of archetypal characters, so you've got the dad who doesn't pay attention to his wife or children, who's just constantly making business deals, the wife who is having an affair with the dad's brother, the babysitter who is like, it doesn't question the fact that there are no children in the house, the jock, the private detective who's hired to like find a necklace and is going to end up having sex with everyone. Do you take those character archetypes, and so they're in a porn movie at the beginning, and then suddenly it turns into a slasher movie, and they have to figure out why they're being killed, and also work within their character archetypes to try and break out of their character archetypes to understand how to survive this. It has a 4.2 rating on IMDb, which tells me that no one on IMDb has a fucking clue what they're talking about, because this movie is amazing. It's so funny. The opening montage is, you know how in like softcore porn films, they do like the kind of sounds and like kind of performative elements of sex, but they never actually like take their underwear. Like maybe the woman will take her top off, but they'll never take their underwear off. And the opening montage is like 10 minutes of what is his name? Jerry O'Connell like grinding against the mother figure in this house while they're talking like really pervertedly about sex, but they're clearly not doing anything. And it's basically all the kind of preamble for sex scenes. And then it just goes straight into it's Jerry O'Connell's character who is the first to die, and everyone freaks out. And as soon as Jerry O'Connell's character dies, the nerd character it suggests putting the blood back into him, and the jock character played by I've got his name here because I didn't actually know him before. It is Chris Redd, who absolutely steals the show in this. Says that's where blood lives, and it just goes off from there. It's very much in like, it puts me in mind of like Garth. I know you've not seen it, but Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, where it's knowingly bad, and but not in the same way as something like Sharknado, where it's kind of winking at the camera too much. Like this plays it very straight. Okay. So there is one of the funniest scenes I have seen in a film in, I'm going to say like 10 years here, where the private eye, played by Josh Margolin, who's one of the writers, and Chris Redd's Jace, who is constantly like dropping different sports that he plays, because he just plays all sports, are talking about the murder, and they're like playing catch over a dining room table, but every time they're throwing the ball, they're just spiking it down into this fully dressed kitchen table and just sending dishes flying everywhere, and no one is mentioning it, and it's so funny. And it goes on, it's one of those things that's really funny for the first like 30 seconds and then stops being funny, and then it just keeps going and becomes so funny again. It has character names in it like Bunny Van Clit and Hugh Dangler, which are just...
yes, that's what I was going to stop you and say.
Go on.
I honestly thought Christopher McDonald would never top the character name of Shooter McGavin.
Yeah, I was going to say, Christopher McDonald, you can guess which character he plays. Yes, that's right. He's the dad who's constantly on the phone to Japan making business deals. And yeah, like Shooter McGavin is a good name, but it's no Hugh Dangler.
No, Hugh Dangler's the son.
Oh, Hugh Dangler's his son, that's right.
His name is Richard Dangler.
Yeah, Richard Dangler. Dick Dangler. Yeah. He is so funny in this movie as well. Like his wife is so obviously cheating on him, and he just doesn't notice anything because he's constantly making deals with Japan. And you know, his wife is murdered with a dildo to the back of the head that literally goes through her mouth. I really cannot recommend it enough. This movie is so funny, and it has, I'm going to say this now, the best fake... They don't even say what sport it is, but the best fake sports team name I've ever heard, where Quinn Beswick, who is also one of the writers on this movie, he plays the nerd character, and he says that when he grows up, he wants to play for the Monterey Jambos, which is it's so good. I wish the Monterey Jambos was a real team, because it is so funny, and I had to mention this because if you get an opportunity to watch it, please go and see it. It is one of the funniest movies I have seen in years, and it has four reviews from critics on Rotten Tomatoes and a 4.2 on IMDb. I don't know why more people haven't seen this, because it is one of the best movies I've seen in a long time.
That sounds absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's well worth checking out. But I think that's going to quite naturally bring us to the end of this week's show, which leaves us with only one simple question to answer, as we always do, and that is, Anthony, what is your favourite movie?
Like, I don't know. It has to be Deep Murder now. Like,
yeah, mine is Deep Murder too. It is. Oh my god, I need to go watch this movie again. I was watching it with my partner, who has a different sense of humour to me, I'm going to say, and she was just sitting there staring at me as I was cackling with laughter at various scenes of this movie. There's a bit where they go into a shower and they get lost and it shoots the interior of the shower and there's steam everywhere and they're all kind of like, oh, I can't see anything. And then it cuts to the exterior of the shower and they're stood right next to each other, just like... It's so funny. Yes, deep murder for me as well. Please join us next week for another one of these, another movie diary. Thank you to Nancy Wyatt and Jared Iscariot for the use of our theme song. You can check out links to their stuff down in the thing below. And thank you to you for listening. Please consider subscribing. We're The Culture Cave on YouTube, and we're the best movie podcast ever on podcasting apps. Give the show a like, get involved in the comments, let us know what you've been watching, and we will see you. We will see you same time, same place next week.
And cut.